Welcome everybody to the Flowing Health podcast. Very excited to have Kenny, the Man Whisperer, on again today. And it is Men's Health Week. So I know Kenny's been really clearly very busy this week, all the amazing work he does with men. And I'm really, grateful he's on the show with us today. So we're going to be talking about issues around men. And I'd like to start with a Man MOT for the mind. So MOT, we're used to car MOTs, and I think a lot of us men have had these manuals. Did you ever have a Haynes manual, Kenny, when you were fixing one of your cars years ago?
I was hoping you would never ask me that question, and I'll tell you why. It's crossed my mind so often. Do I consider myself a man? Because I don't drive, leave alone fix cars. And men drive. And then I don't fix things. A lot of men generally fix. Men are supposed to fix things, apparently. I don't have children. So I'm lucky in that I get to hang out with any generation of blokes. And they can be my friends, I can joke with them. Inside, I'm going to be 58 this year. Inside, I'm 34. Sometimes I can be 12 or less. It doesn't matter. But I think if I was a father, then I'd be at a certain level and I wouldn't be allowed to hang out with my son's friends, leave alone a grandson's friends. So I have never had one of those manuals. The thought of it freaks me out. The thought of driving a car freaks me out. I know I'd kill people. So there are certain aspects of traditional men stuff that I have just stepped out of the ring, including boxing.
Including boxing. Well, I'll be honest, I have bought Haynes manuals, but I never looked at them. So, so it's almost like a man thing to own them. So I had an MG Roadster years ago, and MGs
is cool as that.
Yeah, it was very cool. And those cars are real collectors. So they used to have MG. There was one in Richmond. I used to go to the shop, and you had all these enthusiasts buying the parts that they needed. They'd looked up in the manual to do it themselves. And I thought, firstly, I can't do anything myself. Secondly, I'm not going to look up in the manual and be a geek. I'm just going to bring the car in. And in those days, I mean, those cars were so basic. You could just open the engine and you could repair things. Nowadays, you can't even get to the engine. So actually, maybe those Haynes manuals are disappearing for these modern cars because it's all electronic and you need to plug it into the computer.
Yeah.
But you go into
if I had a car like that, I would want the Haynes manual. I'd leave it lying around like coffee table books. Do you know what I mean?
Just to impress people. Oh, you got one of those. Yeah. Have you read page 35? It's really exciting. I remember the air vent in the car. It was so basic. You open the air vent in the MG and you see the road through it,
Do you know what? And as you said, have you read page 35? I wonder whether in the old days, men could read a whole page, where these days, and I don't know whether it's computer games or sugary food or testosterone or not being grounded or whatever, but the attention span seems to have shrunk down to, what do you call that social TikTok? Seconds. You have seconds, and if you don't get to the point, and it's the same with education in a way. Is these days it's no, I want a quick course, and then I want to be an expert, and then I want a following, rather than I will learn my craft and I'll get to know people in practice. Things have changed. Things are much, 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 much faster.
Yeah, definitely. And I think attention span, I can't remember what they say, it's about 7 seconds. And even for children in schools, it's very worrying because, if the teachers don't get their attention, very quickly, then children just start, staring out the window or trying to, look for a mobile phone, that they've hidden somewhere.
To get the fix.
And I do think things like YouTube, they have their place, for education, for information. But even YouTube, if you look at a video, for example, if you're looking up how to repair, the backlight on an MG, I bet you will find a video for it now. So, you know, people would prefer to get something in 2 minutes than buy a manual, look at, you know, whatever page. And it is, you know, visually, it's very helpful. I've found incredible things on YouTube on how to, I don't know, repair the fridge or something. Anything, you can find anything, you know, on the boiler, how to make it work. So, but you're right. I think that's a big issue. Attention
And
span.
practical things like that. I mean, I have rebalanced the boiler or whatever, and thanks to YouTube. But as far as rebalancing my mind, that's a different story. And what freaks me out is these days when people have an issue, it's so normal to go into the head, fear, fix, and fantasy. And usually it's fearing the fantasy and trying to fix the fantasy rather than anything that's actual fact. And then take all of that to YouTube. What's wrong with me? How do I fix me? How do I do me right? And YouTube will say, well, money, muscles, and monkeying around. And monkeying around is have a false personality, like the false muscles, like the money, whether it's real or not, or you have any value, and be put on a show. So your show makes you almost good enough to connect with, rather than show up, rather than show off. Show up and connect here and now. So all this turning to YouTube with what's wrong with me? How do I fix me? How do I do me right? I think it's caused a lot of damage for a lot of people. And a lot of people, you know, they learn the pickup artist stuff, the PUA thing, or they learn 3 steps to this and 12 steps to that from people who may not actually have a life or a personality or the integrity that they want.
Yeah.
And this is why, for me, it's so important for people to do the traditional thing and turn to other people and connect man to man, or even man to boy. If I'm scared, then it might be the little boy in me that needs connecting from other men, while I say, this is what's up. How was it for you? And then I get to learn from other people's experiences, rather than people trying to sell me something or join my cult or start my course and rise up the ranks with the different courses and I'll fix you. And, you know, to take it to the absolute, I've really got on one here, haven't I? Feel free to butt in.
Keep going. I love it. Yeah.
To take it to the absolute extreme, the number of people that are incredibly violent, and I'm talking about the shootings more in the States, and they go online, and one of the hugest things for men and boys is to belong. They go online and they have found belonging with an incel community. Have you heard of the incels?
Yeah, but do explain.
Celibates.
Yeah.
So incels, I interviewed a guy, I don't remember his name now, but it was after a shooting and he did all the interviews in the media, and he was an incel, and he told me his whole story about how he was left in his room. He didn't have a father. He was brought up by his mother and grandmother. The grandmother died. He didn't really have any guidance, especially male guidance. And he didn't have much of a jawline. And incels have got this thing of how to be a man, how to be an alpha. Having a jawline is where it's at. How to, in order to join the club, you need to be an involuntary celibate, which means no one wants to sleep with you and you possibly haven't even dated because you're ugly with no personality type thing. This guy, poor guy, was bullied by girls in school, and he didn't know how to stand up for himself or how to deal with, you know, girls, not allowed to fight back. He wasn't in any shape or form one of the boys. So it was in front of the computer, looking for fixes, looking for belonging. And very often lost people could find belonging with a drinking lot or a drugging lot, or healthier, a sporty lot, as long as it doesn't become, you know, body dysmorphia and overdoing the sports, or community, an interest group or whatever. It's belonging. And with these people, he said, well, at least I found some people that understood my pain, and who felt worthless like I felt worthless, and who wanted to kill themselves like I wanted to kill myself to stop the pain. At least I found belonging, and these people wouldn't humiliate or reject me. And the rules of the game were to be, not dating, not good looking, and very often self-loathing and enraged by women.
Yeah, and rage towards women, unfortunately.
Exactly.
Thing. Yeah.
So all this pain turns into rage.
Yeah.
And at some stage, suppression can lead into depression due to lack of expression. Or it can go bang, totally out of control. And it's like another part of these people takes over and does the most atrocious things, the most shocking, inhuman things. And people think, well, how could a person like that do that? Well, in a way, it's their dark shadow. It's all the suppression. It's the stuff that's been shoved down. So my whole thing about speak it out and break the spell. Ask other men. Hang out, like name it rather than shame it or blame it. Name the issue, name the pain, name the loss. Where blame is in the head. It's I'm a victim to this because of this. And that doesn't help because it doesn't shift anything. Like accept those things, maybe they're part of the story, but it's not going to move things forward. And shame can own males, I mean females as well, but shame can so totally own males. It's really, I mean, in the old days, it could be called efficient parenting. And to this day, the most powerful men can be crumbled by criticism, withdrawal, abandonment or humiliation.
And shame is such a low vibration. I think it's the lowest. Shame and blame, and humiliation just make us completely I remember my mother could say one thing and completely make me feel like nothing.
Yeah.
And she knew what, the way to do that as well. So I think shame is a really powerful and, very toxic, way of controlling. And just out of interest with this man, I mean, it's obviously clearly it's good for him to name it, but how would you work with people like that? Obviously, you don't want to leave them in those groups isolated. So do you recommend that they join, other men's groups that you often lead yourself, where things are much more open and you name it and it's out in the open, you have the support and you're listened to?
Totally. And it's a huge risk for a lot of these people to go into, well, it's a huge risk for most men to go to their first group, because it's like being the new boy in school and everyone's already got a best friend. And the new boy in school's going to think, well, what's the culture? What's the pecking order? Who do I need to be? How do I need to act? And they leave themselves out of it in order to be whoever other people want them to be. And the whole point of the groups for me is, rather than be like us, be like our tribe, come and join our cult, it's more, who are you? Let go of who you no longer need to be and find out who you are. Ask for feedback and be your own authentic man. Be like you, because it's only once you've accepted yourself as one of the men can the other men truly accept you as one of the men. And that's for men. With boys, it's a very different story. And this has got nothing to do with age. This is everything to do with stage in life. And you can get boys clubs until 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and over the hill and far away. It's about the behavior and the attitudes and where people are coming. Am I being authentic, in alignment with myself and true to myself? Or do I need acceptance and validation from the outside? Am I coming from I am and my own power, able to empower others? Or am I coming from am I, where I'll give the power to other people, asking, am I safe? Am I appropriate? Am I going to be humiliated or abandoned? Am I good enough, etc.?
Yes, and I love this. I mean, the men's groups that I've been in, including some of your groups, the fact that when we name what is, even if we're vulnerable, we're actually being held. It's being held in that space, and knowing that it's a safe space. And I would, I'm sure you do as well, encourage anybody to just try it out. And what I find very moving is when I come into some of these groups, and sometimes there's a man there for the first time in his life, and he's maybe 50s or 60s, holding maybe anger or unresolved things, and they express that for the first time. It's just there's a magical dissolving, beginning to dissolve. And as men, we've been brought up to to hold it in. Don't cry, don't do this, don't do that. So I know you mentioned this term manning up, which I think there's a slight resistance to that, using that on social media. So we don't want to make too big a thing, but let's talk a little bit about the whole concept of that, which I think is maybe expressing, connecting, feeling safe, vulnerable, robustly vulnerable, and listened to. So say a little bit about the manning up in the positive, the positive aspects of that. Really,
it's a tragic term, and it's often said to boys. And man up generally means stuff it down, sell out on yourself, do something against your better judgment, against your values, against your integrity. Where for me, I've kind of think I've nicked it, I've stolen it, and I've changed it to man up and talk about it. So it's not inflict harm on self or others. It's be in the pain or the issue or whatever, and have the courage to name it, to break the spell on it. Man up and talk about it. Like, it would be a lot easier for a lot of people to get into a fight or a legal battle or a physical fight, or play the victim, or rather than be in the pain and feel it and name it and share it with other people, bust it out of the water, out it. And what we do in the groups, and for me, it's like, fine to say get vulnerable and all that, but be safely vulnerable rather than death wish stupid vulnerable, which means, whether it's family, friends, little old lady on a park bench, it doesn't matter, as long as it feels safe and you can open up rather than taking the lid off and you're on your own. And for me, it's like, in a group, to be able to say something and then hear everyone else's experience of this is one thing. That's the basic layer of I'm not alone. And that alone has been a life changer for people. It's like, oh my God, I thought this was my issue and only my issue, and I was alone with it. I'm a loser and a failure and I can't tell anyone. But to name it and to find out that other people are there too is the first step. And the next step, magically, is breathing into it and feeling it, being with it here and now. And for me, the anger is that the current anger is generally not what people are angry about. It's something that's being fueled. So breathe into it and feel it, and then follow the feeling back and see where it takes you. Because that's the core wound, or that's what's being triggered, or that's where the energy is coming. This is where the charge is. So surely that's the bit that needs to be taken care of rather than the drama in hand. Because if it's not this drama in hand, it'll be another one and another one as it keeps playing out. And it keeps playing out not because life's against anyone. I believe it keeps playing out because life is saying, this is the bit that you need to know. This is the bit, the place where you need to let go. And the way to do it is not suppress it or fight it or talk about it or think about it or process it. It's be with it and know it and claim it back. And that for me is the most sacred place, is when people meet themselves where they're depressed pause buttons down in the past in a place of trauma. And magically, as that is met and released, then something opens up in life. This repetitive Groundhog Day issue, this cycle no longer continues. And then it's like having the courage to live into a bigger life rather than the same old story. And for me, that's the name of the game. Living beyond all of this rather than making a personality out of it.
Beautiful, so well expressed. And I really think, you know, having done a lot of work with Qigong, Buddhism, all these things, a lot of it is about, you know, honoring the pain or the problem, breathing into it, giving it space, acknowledging it, and gradually it begins to dissolve rather than running away, or like you said rightly, suppressing it, because then that becomes often, that's what illness is, you know, both mental and physical, that it's trapped, it's something trapped in the body. So I think this idea of, you know, honoring it and naming it, going into it, transforming it so it's gone forever. And I think all these emotions as well are like, I often see them like clouds. They, you know, the anger, you know, it's here now, but we're not the anger. But like you said, follow it back to the root. Maybe it's something that happened, you know, 40 years ago. Once we connect with that and we can release around that. And I think one thing I've noticed is in the groups that often when men name a certain issue, I think, God, that's just like me, or these three guys just said something, and we're all the same. You know, we're all human, actually. So it's not even, it is, you know, a bit different, obviously, men and women, but actually same applies to women. You know, when you name this and realize that we have so many more similarities than differences. You know, we're not odd and sticking out. You know, we're all human and being listened to, and having compassion for ourselves and courage. I would say, I think that's a good word to allow ourselves to go into that, express it. And I've seen so much transformation in men, and I'm really, you know, grateful for the work you do, and for there's quite a lot more for, you know, people can look up, you know, different men's groups, and I think I'm sure you would encourage men to just
Totally
look into it, just look into it, and find a group you resonate with, and yeah.
And not to be anyone that anyone else tells you to be. Find out at every, you know, in my groups, it's like, who do you no longer need to be? And right here and right now, who are you, what's up, and what needs to pass? And it's a journey. So move on. Don't join the cult. Don't give your power away, unless it's a group of friends. And you know, I think my longest men's group's coming up for, I don't know, 18 years or something, closed group. I've been holding them for over 20, but that's a closed group. It's because they trust each other, they like each other, they know each other, they care for each other, they laugh with each other. It fits. That's not some sort of a cult or a formula. It's people who journey together and share their lives, and they get to know themselves and know each other. And that's magical. But to be doing the next level and the next level to get the fix and to find another layer of what's wrong, other way around. Move forward in life and let whatever needs to come up to be released, release. For me, yeah, I love efficiency. And I was going to ask you actually, so we're talking very much, for me, it's like on the emotional level rather than the mental level. And the mental is very much, you know, my old addiction. I'll avoid my emotions and I'll think about it and fix it. Tell me about the physical level and the way you get men to embody themselves and get into their bodies and breathe their bodies and release whatever's being held there.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this recently, and I've been thinking about maybe creating a Qigong for men kind of program or course, because in Qigong, because we, you know, get connected to the body quite a lot and tend to switch the mind off as we reconnect with the body, often the body tells us where things are held. We can feel the tension, we can sense where there's a lack of flow maybe. And I think not just for men, but I think often men are not as connected to their bodies. I've done workshops where I say, you know, just sense your feet into the earth, you know, sense this grounding. And there were men, you know, never felt their feet in their lives, you know, say, oh God, I can feel my feet. It's like, so let's just, you know, when we connect with the body tells us, actually, my right shoulder is really stiff. It was all right before this session. The body is telling me there's something trapped here. So with with Qigong work, we don't need to look at the issue, even if it might be something emotional or some trauma that's trapped. But when we work on the body and release and allow the flow of energy, the energy or the qi sorts it out for us. And I think that's one thing I like about the practice. And I've seen it, thousands of times, both on retreats I've been on and, in my own study, that people can release emotional things and traumas in the body that have been there for years without giving that any focus. They've held an empty ball for half an hour. The body has emptied, we've given it space, and that has given it permission, whatever it was, to dissolve. And then people think, I wonder why I'm not angry anymore. I've been angry for all these years. There's a mysterious aspect to it. And I think I trust that we are all energy beings. Well, we know that, even Einstein says it, we're all energy beings. What if we could allow the energy daily to work through us, work for us? And, some people might call that, do that through prayer, through God, but whatever it is, something beyond ourselves. And you talk about breathing, so that's a really important aspect. And I know often you say when people get tense in the groups, breathe, and it's like, oh yeah, I forgot. I forgot. I'm about to die. Let me breathe.
And that is the edge of panic that people go to and forget to go through. Because if I'm not breathing, I know that I'm in my head, I'm getting into panic, I'm getting into fear and fantasy and fixing, I'm not present, and I'm actually feeding that trauma. I'm stuck with it and I'm being held by it. Where as soon as I breathe, it can pass. I can feel it, I can feel through it, consciously or unconsciously. I can get back in my body, I can feel my feet on the ground, as you say. And how many men, during the, just before the pandemic, I think I've told you the story of the way that I went into lockdown because someone I was working with had the symptoms, not lockdown, I went into isolation. And a few days later, the country went into lockdown. While I was in isolation, I was having feelings and weird thoughts. I noticed myself checking out of my window on the third floor in my old third floor flat in London, expecting to see the military down there and expecting to see trouble. And I noticed the silence and I expected it to be broken with gunfire. So I was waiting for these things and I was looking, and it was a bit weird they weren't there, but I knew they'd be there soon. And I realized that a trauma inside me had been triggered. If I didn't realize that, then I'd be carrying this anxiety, not breathing, getting fearful, and generally fear demands anger. It's almost like anger will protect fear or sadness or any vulnerability. And then that anger could be put in on myself, harming myself with, I don't know, food, drink, drugs, what nasty
destructive,
thoughts.
Always destructive.
Exactly. Or other people, violence to other people, aggressive, passive aggressive, physical, emotional, whatever. Thank God I noticed what was going on. I breathed into the feeling. I followed the feeling back. And that's when I realized that I was back at my childhood, when there was curfew, when there was gunfire, when it was not safe. And then on the day of lockdown, I thought, well, if I was triggered that quickly and easily, then other people are going to be. And if we can talk it out, if we can name it, then we can release it and navigate it together rather than lashing out on other people and lashing in on ourselves. So that was where I felt, thank God I realized, because so many people don't realize. And I felt it and I followed the feeling back and I got to know it. And I guess the next level there is when I know where my vulnerable child is in limbo, in trauma with a broken spirit. And when I breathe, then in effect, I'm breathing the man in me present and connected. And I'm taking the vulnerable child back from my protector. And my protector might have saved the life of that vulnerable child, But if my protector remains in control, it's costing my life as I recreate and survive trauma. So the man in me is present, the child in me is safe, and my protector can inform me as I move forward in life, rather than control me, recreating the same old life that I bitch about, and I wonder why it's not shifting.
I think that there's a third podcast in this, the child, the protector, and the man, because I love that whole concept and how they work together to inform each other, to support each other.
This brings us to the S words that we talked about earlier. Spirituality, which is quite a no-no with some people. And, I said that I can flippantly say, spiritual or nature or God or whatever you want to call it. When I have a safe child inside of me, then I can hear the voice of God, or I can notice who or what's crossing my path, or I can attract bigger, better things, goodness, because then I'm not living in fear and trauma and putting out that vibe to attract that experience, but I'm safe enough to be available to life and to notice what life might bring. Luckily, one of the ways that I believe God communicates with me is through my inner DJs. So I need to get into the words of the songs that he plays in my head, or the vibe, or whatever it is. It could be the people I pass in the street. It could be anything. But I believe life communicates with me. And exactly as you said, life communicates with me with the pain in my shoulder, or the man or the woman or the youth I pass in the street, and my reaction and projection on them. And it says, this is a clue to where you need to go to set yourself free, to be ready to be more of life, to take part in more of life. So I believe that life communicates, but I need to be present and connected to be able to notice it, rather than being in my head looking for trouble and solving trouble, and then respond to it rather than reacting to the bigness and the wonderful of it, which is out of control and therefore should be killed, but to respond into a bigger life rather than react and keep it small in survival.
Beautiful. We're coming to the end, just to end on the inner child. I mean, look, children, when they're safe, or, children naturally in their nature are curious, everything's possible. They're growing all the time. They have no fear really when they're expressing. So I think that safe inner child and connecting with that inner child and protecting it and nourishing that inner child has to be the key, one of the keys to being a healthy man or woman. So we can talk more about that next time.
I would say, if I may, one last thing.
Yes, of course.
We've talked about the man up and talk about it and get present and break the spell. If we are to be products of our environments, whether it's our external environments or our internal environments, what goes on in my head, what goes on in my psyche, then surely it's my responsibility to create or enable a good environment to be a product of, rather than being in the trenches, fighting the small dramas, to be coming from a bigger picture, to be free, to be creative, and to really take part in life.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kenny. We'll put all the links below. Kenny, the Man Whisperer, I really appreciate our chat, and I look forward to our third one. I think we've got the essence already for the third one when you have some time. And thank you so much for supporting all the men, especially this week. I know you're doing a lot of work on Men's Health Week, but actually, I think you probably agree every week is Men's Health Week. So we're here to, always be open to that and encourage everybody to connect and open up and be brave and just be joyful and happy.
Amen.
We'll leave on that laughter note. Thank you so much, Kenny. Have a great week ahead. Thank you.
You too. Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.